In the village of Obuasi, the old men still speak of Zola, the man who traded the warmth of his children's laughter for a piece of cold polished glass. Zola was a man who looked at his life and saw only what was missing. He had a wife, Amina, whose hands were steady, and 3 children whose eyes held the morning sun. But to Zola, his farm was too small, his heart was too dark, and his clothes were too rough. He did not want to be a father or a farmer. He wanted to be a man people would fear, a name that would make others bow. One evening, a merchant appeared at the edge of the market. He did not call out like the others. He did not beg people to look at his goods. He simply sat and waited. On his mat lay a mirror framed in gold, so bright it caught the last light of the sun and held it. Zola stopped walking. "This is not for seeing your face," the merchant said quietly as Zola stepped closer. "This shows the life you deserve." Zola looked into the glass. He did not see the market. He did not see the dust or the noise or the people around him. He saw himself sitting on a throne, dressed in silk, covered in gold, surrounded by servants who waited for his command. The image was so clear that his real life began to feel small. "What must I give?" Zola asked. "The things that weigh you down," the merchant replied. "The things that keep you tied to the ground." Zola did not think for long. The next day, he sold his father's land, the land that had fed his family for years, the land that carried his father's name. He bought the mirror and brought it home. Amina stood by the doorway when he arrived. "The children are hungry," she said, "and the neighbors are saying we no longer own the land." Zola did not look at her. "The land is nothing," he said. "Look at this. Soon you will have more than all of them." Amina stepped closer and looked at the mirror. "A mirror cannot feed children, Zola," she said. "And the man who only looks at himself forgets how to see the people in front of him." Zola did not answer. He sat inside the hut and stared into the glass. Days passed, then weeks. He stopped going to the farm. There was no farm anymore. He stopped speaking to his children. He stopped listening when Amina spoke. All he did was sit and look. Each time he looked, the man in the mirror seemed richer, stronger, and more powerful. Inside the hut, everything else was getting worse. Their food ran out. The children grew quiet. Amina began to beg from neighbors who had started whispering about her husband. One night, she stood in front of him. "Sell it," she said. "Sell the mirror. We can still fix this." Zola's voice rose for the first time in days. "You want to keep me small?" he asked. "You want me to stay in this debt?" That night, Amina packed what little she could carry. She took the children and left. Zola did not follow. He did not call her name. He did not even look away from the mirror. The next morning, the house was silent. Zola stood up and walked outside. He called once. No answer. He laughed softly to himself. "They were the wait," he said. "Now everything will come." He went back inside and sat down. He lifted the mirror, but the glass was dark. He wiped it with his hand. Nothing. He wiped it again with his shirt. Still nothing. As the light from the morning sun reached the inside of the hut, the mirror cleared. Zola froze. The throne was gone. The gold was gone. The man in silk was gone. In the mirror, he saw himself, thin, tired, and alone. The hut behind him looked empty and broken. He reached out to touch the image. His fingers met cold glass. Zola stood up and ran. He ran to the market, shouting for the merchant. No one answered. The merchant was gone. He ran to the village square. "Help me," he said. "Please." The people did not shout at him. They did not insult him. They simply stepped aside and let him pass, as if he was no longer one of them. Zola walked back slowly. That evening, he carried the mirror to the road that led out of the village. He sat there and watched the path his family had taken. The gold frame caught the last light of the sun, but the road stayed empty. No one came back for him. And in Obuasi, they still tell the story of Zola. They do not tell it to mock him. They tell it to warn their sons, because a man who spends his life chasing the image of who he wants to be may wake up one day and realize he has lost everything he already was.